Is real estate still one of the smartest ways to build long-term wealth today? With interest rates higher, prices shifting, and headlines changing every week, a lot of people are wondering if buying now still makes sense or if waiting feels safer. Welcome to Realty Bites, conversations on real estate and lifestyle. Today, I'm joined by two highly experienced and respected real estate professionals. Sandy Casella with eXp Realty, and Ruth Valentine with Remax Realty Services. And me, your host, Evelyn Lopes, also with Remax Realty Services. Between the three of us, we bring over 100 years of hands-on real estate experience. We each have over 30 years of experience in real estate, all starting in the late 1980s. That's decades of navigating different markets, helping clients through uncertainty, and seeing what actually holds up over time. Today's conversation is about clarity, not noise. We'll look at different perspectives, talk about real life scenarios and experiences, and in the end, hopefully, you'll have some information so that you can make informed decisions moving forward. Let's get into it. Good morning, Ruth. Good morning, Sandy. Thank you so much.
Good morning.
So I'm curious, what are you seeing right now with your clients in terms of the real estate market and their feelings about real estate today?
I think most of the people that I'm talking to are still not quite sure that they want to jump off the fence. They've been there for so long. They're feeling so, what's happening in the market with the prices going down. They think they may go further with the interest rates going down. Eventually, we have to hit the bottom and it has to turn around. And if people are not buying when it's at the bottom, they're losing out. And I think that we might be there.
Right. And I think a lot of it is also that confusion, right? And without any clarity, they don't know which direction to go. And on one hand, they're hearing, it's not a good time to buy. It is a good time to buy, invest in other things other than real estate. When the mind doesn't know what to do, it chooses to do nothing. I think that's why a lot of people are sitting on the fence right now.
I think that people that are educated about real estate and have been following real estate are jumping back in at this point because they realize that the conditions are really good right now, despite what you're hearing on the news. The people who are always going to wait and think that things will get better and easier are sitting around waiting. They're waiting for the headlines to tell them that it's time to buy real estate. If you wait for that, you're just going to end up losing, plain and simple. They're designed to sell newspapers or whatever, not to help you improve your life. So I think that's a real mistake if that's what people are doing.
A lot of potential buyers, especially the younger ones, are feeling that real estate is beyond their reach. We know that the average age of the first-time home buyer is now in the late 30s, where before it was in the 20s. It's just because it's unaffordable. And a lot of the perspective of home buyers has changed. When I first bought my home, it was just like, let's get into the market. It's whatever we can get into, let's start and build from there. We'll go from a condo or a townhouse, stay there a couple of years, build some equity, move on to the next one and the next one. And I think now a lot of people are thinking, well, my first house, I want a detached, I want a two-car garage, I want this, I want that. And the expectations are so high that it sort of limits their ability to move into the market.
Yeah, I agree. But I also think that issue comes from our generation, right? Like as parents, we all work with buyers, like first time buyers or younger people that are just getting started. And their parents also don't want them to do that. Well, you can't buy a condo because there's maintenance fees. Like condos are a relatively new concept in this country, right? Like there was no such thing as condos 30 years ago. If you remember, how old are condos? Maybe 20 years old. So there's a lot of people in our generation that are like, well, you can't buy a condo because of maintenance fees and stuff. And we're setting the wrong expectation. Us three understand this concept of get yourself in the door. It's leverage. It helps you move up later. Sometimes that's a hard fight because you're trying to overcome some issues that don't make sense.
You're very right with that. I have seen it quite a bit.
We all live out in the suburbs. We don't want our children to move downtown where there are a lot of condos. I think sometimes it's us trying to keep them closer to us that runs that as well. I know that Natalie would have been perfectly happy to buy a house downtown Toronto, and it would have been a condo. It would be me that was not as happy there because she wasn't with me here in Brenton. Sometimes we lead in a way that maybe we shouldn't.
And that's a whole bigger picture because that is on a big scale. I think that's a big thing.
And right now in Toronto, for the condo market, you can get some exceptional deals and opportunities. And there are those little micro condos, 400, 450 square feet. I think when you do get into your first home, it's got to be something that you can stay. I always say 3 to 5 years minimum. Like if you think you're going to buy today and sell tomorrow or a couple of months or next year and make a profit, you're not going to do that. Like I think the COVID ability to do that was unprecedented and not real. There was just so many factors worldwide that sort of made that possible. In reality, it's always 3 to 5 years and then move on. So when you do select the house that you want to buy, you have to also say that you can see yourself in there in 3 to 5 years. So if you've got one child and another one on the way and you're looking at a 1 bedroom condo because your baby right now is only an infant, well, that might not work for 3 to 5 years. So you've got to look a little bit long term. And
I think the best advice is buy the best property you can with what you have today, and then you can move on, right? I think another issue, I just want to go back to this whole mindset shift a little bit about owning property. I think another big issue is some of these influencers, if you're watching TikTok or Instagram videos, and they're saying things that aren't true about real estate versus investing in the stock market, like buying a home is not a good investment. They're not comparing apples to apples. That's a really damaging thing to say. And I see some of these and it really angers me because I've seen all of us have seen what kind of wealth real estate can create for people over the long term that other things can't. Well, I want to drill down on that if we have time today about the difference between investing in the stock market and investing in real estate. Because to use a blanket statement like a house is not a good investment is 100% false in my opinion.
okay, so let's talk about that and highlight some of the pros and cons of buying a house. And we'll start with the cons. We want to be unbiased here, right? One of the cons of buying a house is it locks you down. You have to be in that area for 3 to 5 years. So if you got a job where you think you might get transferred or you want to move to a different part of the country, having a house is going to lock you down. So that's one thing. The other thing is you do have those monthly payments that you've got to keep up with. We're supposed to have our monthly payments with our rentals too, right? What are some of the other things that might sort of prevent people from getting into the house? Down payments, they find that it's restrictive. Although we know that there's programs out there and other ways of still getting that down payment to get into the market. What are some of the other things that hold people back?
I don't think that owning a house locks you down though. I don't necessarily agree with that one because I think it gives you leverage. I don't see what the problem is in setting down roots. I get what you're saying. Maybe you get a job and then a year from now you get transferred or you want to take a job somewhere else. You can rent out that property. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to sell it. If you have a 1-year lease, you can't just up and leave. So really, what's the difference? I don't think in my opinion, I don't agree with that argument that it holds you back. Because I think you just keep the property, you rent it out, whatever.
I think that when people are thinking of their first home, often they're not thinking of the rental that they could do with it. First-time buyers have to get over the step to get in the housing market before they start thinking about anything other than that. And I think today's generation with the work from home attitude have a different attitude to roots than we did. So they feel that they can up and go all over the world and work. Maybe it's influencers telling them, hey, you can work from anywhere in the world, don't buy a house for this. But I think it is something that comes in their head where we would never have thought of that because we physically had to go to work every day.
Yeah. But if you look at that scenario, the three of us, let's face it, can work from anywhere in the world. I own houses, right? If I wanted to work somewhere else, I have lots of options of what I can do with my house. And then, but what? While I'm working somewhere else in the world, my house is building equity. My house is going up in value. And I've still got that nest egg if and when I decide to come back. So I think that there's a lot of different things you can do. You could Airbnb your house. Doesn't mean it has to be short term. Like people automatically think Airbnb 1 night, 2 nights. No, you can rent it out 4 or 5 months at a time. So I think that owning real estate, I think that the people, I don't know this for a fact, but I think arguably the wealthiest people in the world got there with real estate in
I
some
agree.
shape or form. So even if you say, okay, I don't want to be tied down, I want to be able to travel everywhere, it doesn't mean you need to buy a house that you're going to live in. You could invest in REITs, you could invest in a lot of different types of real estate that aren't a home. People have this concept where I'm going to buy a house, not necessarily. My oldest son, the first house he bought, he had no intention of living in that house. He bought the house, lived with me, rented that house out. And then he bought another one from that one and another one from that one. Real estate doesn't mean you have to be tied down, but it gives you stability. It gives you a nest egg. It's a forced savings.
Right.
Gives you options. That's the best.
If you auction, exactly right.
That's very true. And here's something that I pulled out in terms of Stats Canada on people who own homes versus people who rent homes. It says that 1/5 of the country's total national wealth has been contributed from the residential real estate housing market. Homeowners under 35 had a median net worth of about 457,100 compared with 44,000 for renters. And among those aged 55 to 64, homeowners had a median net worth of around 1.2 million, while renters had about 43,000.
Okay, that's great.
Huge difference.
And every single one of us has seen that where older seniors are going into a retirement home. Their wealth is tied up in their house and their children are benefiting from that. We have all seen that.
Right.
And
And when we were talking about options, that's exactly what it gives. Here was another stat from Stats Canada on financial security. It showed that families who own a home but have no pension still had a median net worth of about 914,000, while renters with a pension had a median net worth of only 359,000. It shows how much home ownership gives you that equity, which gives you the leverage.
which gives you the options. And it's all about options. Let's talk about why that is. I think you have the same information. Like, why is that people who own property are wealthier? Because some people argue you have to have the money to buy it in the first place, and that's why they're wealthier. That's not true. Investors talk about leverage, compounding, forced savings, making things automatic. And that is exactly what a house does for you, right? You buy a property, it's a forced savings because you have to make your payments every month and you have to contribute every month. That's why I buy real estate, because I know if I had money in the stock market or investments, the next shiny object, I'd be selling that because I can get a bigger return over here. So that's why I buy real estate, because I know I'm not disciplined enough to put the money in a savings account or in the stock market. It won't last.
I totally agree with you. Forced savings is the biggest reason I think that people get wealthy from a house. You guys know when we were talking yesterday, and I told you Rick calls me scatter cash because I literally that's what I am. And the house makes me I wouldn't have the focus or the discipline to invest that money. I would spend it on something. So having a house has always been good for me because I'm forced to put that money away and save through no fault of my own.
And I look at myself and other people who have homes. There's no way we would have been able to accumulate that much wealth without real estate. Even if we worked and we didn't even have to pay rent and just put that money in an account, we wouldn't have the money that the real estate has afforded us to have.
And you know what that is? People will say that if you invest it correctly, you could. And that's true. But the odds are stacked against you. The world is not set up for you to win. What I mean is the banks, investments, all that stuff, they are not set up for you to win. They're set up for them to win. The bank will help you put money. Like if you walked into the bank and said, I have $200,000 I want to invest, they will help you. Guess where they'll put it? They're not putting it where it's best for you. They're putting it where it's best for them. Let me rephrase that maybe, because that's maybe drastic. They may be putting it where it's best for you within their umbrella. that's what's best for them. So they're not looking out for your long-term wealth. Whereas when you are buying real estate, you're looking out for your long-term wealth. And I think that's the biggest problem, that these things are not set up for people to win. So when you buy a house, you are set up to win because you're taking control and you take the control back. I want to give another example for young people. If you rent a property, or let's say you buy a property and something goes wrong, you lose your job, whatever, you lose your job. You own a property and you have some equity. If you have equity in your house, you can tap into that equity to get you through those rough times. If something happens, it takes you 3 to 4 months to find another job, you have options to be able to leverage some of that equity to keep you going, or manage things through the bank to help you make your payments. The bank doesn't want to take your house. But if you rent, your landlord's not waiting for 4 months to get paid. There's no leverage there. There's no options there. And that's why I think it's so important. If you have your money in some type of investment, you're going to take that money out of that investment because things are going rough. Whereas it's not so easy to do that in your house. It's not so easy to just pull money out.
Mhm. And I think for me also, real estate is emotional. I feel like I have to have root. We've lived in our current house for quite some time. My kids grew up here. They've all moved away. They've all bought their own homes under 30 and have even sold those homes and moved on to other homes. And the only reason they've been able to do that is because they got into real estate.
I think what we're trying to impress upon, especially young people, is that real estate is a long-term gain. It's not something you're going to jump in and make money on quickly. You get benefits of that long-term gain while you're in it. You get roots. You live in that house and you can make that house your own, which you don't have that same option to do when you're in renting someone else's place.
Mhm.
And another thing, Sandy, when we were talking yesterday, you heard somebody on TikTok say, well, if something goes wrong in a house, you've got to fix it. Where if something goes wrong, the landlord has to fix it. And then I think at the time you were saying, well, that's not true because it's all in your rent. The
Yeah.
money's all in your rent to fix those things. So I think what we want to help young people understand is, if you want a house, you can get one. We just have to figure out a way for you to get it. Once you have the house, you'll be on the road to being wealthy, as opposed to if you were investing in the stock market, you have to have more discipline and take more thought than if you buy a house, it just comes more automatically. And I think most of us like the road of least resistance.
I think if you look at anybody who's got wealth, none of them are renting. I think they own their own home, maybe a few others. I think you're absolutely right, Ruth, that a lot of people are sitting on the sidelines because they don't know how. And that's that uncertainty, that lack of clarity. If they found a way to get into home ownership and they were given the choice, do you want to rent or do you want to buy a house? My guess is they'd say, I want a house.
I think the vast majority of Canadians still value owning their own property. I think most people do, but I think you're right. It is a matter of, like, what do I buy? How do I even do this? Where do I start? That's a whole other podcast we could do with, where do I start? And like I said, as our generation there's a lot of us that don't want our kids don't want to start at the bottom because we taught them not to start at the bottom. Let's be honest. There's leverage for that generation. We didn't have parents giving us money to buy a property. A lot of kids these days have that. What's the stat? 50% or more of houses that are being bought today, the parents are helping them in some way. If that's co-signing, if that's giving them a down payment, whatever. There's, that stat is very high. So
Yeah, when I did have help. When I was 22, I came downstairs one morning and my dad said, I have $10,000. You can have it. If you don't do something with it by the end of the month, I'm going to invest it in something else. If you want the $10,000 right now, you can use that and buy a house. And I bought a house that day.
that's a great story. How did you buy your first house then? We could tell how we bought our first houses.
Penny Wishart was my agent. She's an agent in Brampton. And I phoned her up on an ad in the newspaper and she showed me 3 houses just like they tell you in real estate school. And I bought the third one just like they tell you in real estate school.
No, it's enough.
And the rest is history.
How did you buy your first one?
I don't know. My first house, my husband and I had gotten engaged and we ended up buying a house with a long closing. We didn't have all the money right then, but we figured we'd have it by the end. And we got rid of debt, car loans and things like that, and then put that money into buying a house as little as we could. But we also wanted to make sure that our payments were affordable, right? I don't believe that you go up to your head with your payments because and that becomes stressful. When you buy a house, it's this whole plan. Nobody comes up one morning and says, "Oh, I'm going to buy a house today," unless their dad gives them. But for most, I think it's sort of a plan. Yes, I'd like to buy a house. Where am I thinking I want to live? How much money do I have? What's the bank willing to give me? What do I feel comfortable with monthly? And all of those pieces of the puzzle have to come together for it to be a good decision.
Yeah. Evelyn, that's so interesting because the way you bought a house back then is exactly the way you buy a house today. Exactly, like nothing has changed. You decided you wanted to buy a house, you had some savings, and then you didn't have enough. You started looking, you made sure you might like nothing has changed. Is that you could give that advice today and it's the same thing. There's no difference. And you don't come up with all those answers today. You just start the decision. I'd like to buy a house, and then you just go from there, and the pieces will all fall into place, right? So that's yeah. And how old were you? I'm just curious.
I was 27.
Okay. So I was 22. That's interesting, Ruth, because I was 22 when we bought our first house as well. And we bought it the way we saved for our first house is every day when we would come home, we had mason jars and we would put dollar bills. Yes, there were dollar bills, $2 bills, quarters, dimes, like we had them all laid out up to $2 bills, quarters, nickels, dimes, pennies. We put them in these mason jars, and every week I would go to the bank and deposit the money. And that's how we saved up for our first house. An interesting story that the real estate agent, this has really shaped my career as well. And I've never forgot this. And that we were looking for houses. We went into an open house. We were 22 years old. We hadn't even told our family what we were doing. We put an offer in on a house. I went to the bank. It was CIBC, and I gave them the agreement of purchase and sale. And she said, "We can't finance this house." And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Because this lot is 20 feet wide. And we'll only finance houses if the lot is 22 feet wide." Back then, remember I said there were no condos. And I was like, "Okay." And she goes, "Well, what are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, I just won't buy it." And she goes, "You have to buy it." And I was like, "What are you talking about? I have to buy it." And she said, "This deal is firm." And of course I said, "What's firm?" I didn't even know. We had a real estate agent. She would come and pick us up. Remember those days? She came and pick up in her car, drove us around. We put an offer in on a house, and then we got really scared. And we backed out. It was a conditional offer. And we backed out. And she said, "Are you sure? Are you sure this is a good deal?" And we were like, "No, we're too scared." So we backed out. And then she ended up selling that house a couple of days later for more money. However, then we went off, bought this at an open house. And I always thought to myself after that, how in good conscience did this real estate agent let us walk into a house, 22-year-old kids, buy a house, and not explain to us what we were getting ourselves into? Now, I understand he was working for the seller, and that's fine. But still, in good conscience, we ended up buying the house. We got financing from a mortgage broker, and we made a lot of money for who flipped it. That story's always shaped my life. I was 22. People said, "Well, you can't do that today." Well, you know what? Maybe you can't with a mason jar, but there's other ways you can do it. We didn't go to bars. We had a child. We didn't eat out. There was still Uber Eats. There was, you know what I mean? So we had enough sacrifices.
Absolutely. And I think that was what I was just going to say is that buying real estate, you do have to make some sacrifices. So I hear some of my kids' friends, they're like, "Well, we want to go to the bar. We want to travel. We want to do this. We want to do that. And we want to buy a house, but we can't buy a house." Well, you can't buy a house because you're putting your money everywhere else. Buy the house, get some equity, and later in life, then you can do whatever you want, right? And you have to put some sacrifices up front.
Yeah.
One of the things I think people don't realize when they buy a house, and maybe it was just me, but this is truly how I felt. When I sat in that first house and the bills came in, I loved them. I loved them because they were mine. The house was mine. I could do whatever I wanted in it. And I was so happy when the bills came in. I wouldn't say I sacrificed a lot, but I didn't maybe shop as much. But man, I loved going to the grocery store all of a sudden because it was the one thing I would let myself spend money on. I couldn't go shopping. I couldn't buy a lot of clothes. I couldn't do this. But man, I loved that grocery store because I got my shopping fix there. And I think that people underestimate how much of a good feeling they get from their house as well.
Mhm. I love that story. Great way to look at it. It's gratitude, right? It's just practicing gratitude.
Yeah, and I totally understand that. I feel like a house is emotional. I like to be able to come home and decorate it myself and say, this is mine. And I love the thought of having my kids grow up in this house and have some stability in their life. I know some people move all the time. We were fortunate enough that we were able to stay in this house for a long time, and they've got their childhood friends that they had from little, and we're out in the country. So a lot of people here tend to stay a long time. They've got their same friend and their families are still here. So most of the kids have moved away, but they come back to see their parents. And yeah, it's that emotional bond, right?
Yeah, that's amazing. I moved a lot, but that's one thing I would do differently is I would have held on to more of the houses. We were mostly flipping them and then I kind of would move. But I think I would have held on to more of them and stayed in one house longer. The longest I've ever stayed in a house, other than my childhood house, was like 16 years. That's what I would do different. I would just keep one house for a lot longer.
I'm like Evelyn. We've been here. Natalie grew up in this house. She was one when we came, and we're still here. So it's been a long time. I think another thing we don't think about is the stability, not only that it gives you, but the stability that owning a home gives your children.
Absolutely.
And one of the stats I was really surprised was when I was reading Habitat for Humanity, they put stats out that show you that if you own a house, your child feels more secure because they know that house is going to be theirs. I have other friends and relatives who never owned a house or didn't own a house for very long, and they rented a lot. And they felt that when stuff got bad, they just moved to a different house. They found someone else that would take them in at a different place. So they moved a lot and said that really undermined their confidence and security. It is something we don't really think about a house, but it is really good for children.
Yeah. Especially if you're renting from a homeowner, that's typically what happens, right? Because we don't have a lot of purpose-built rentals anymore. So people are renting in a condo or wherever, and sometimes that landlord has to sell the property and then forced to move. Like it's just not, I think the instability for the kids comes more from the feeling from the parents, right? That because a kid doesn't, I don't think they really understand that they may not even know that they're renting, but they do know that they're moving more often or that you're not putting money into the property because you're renting in most cases. So I think that's a big thing. I think that stat is very important. There is more stability there.
And I think too, it's us giving our kids that confidence that they can buy a house. It's so funny. My son moved out west. He was in the military and he was deployed. He was coming back after 10 months and he said, Mom, when I come back and you come out to see me, can we go look at houses? Oh, flew out there. We went to look at houses, and the first day or second day, I said, this is a house, a condo. I think you should buy it. He's like, I didn't say I want to buy it. I just said I want to look at it. And I said, well, you don't ask a realtor to look if you really want to do it. And I felt like I had to push him a little bit to buy it because he's like, oh my God, now I'm committed and this is a payment. We said, look at the payments. Let's work it all out. I can't even remember whether it was the same as what his rent was or marginally a little bit more, but basically the same amount of money for a newer place, a nicer place, and bigger and all that kind of stuff. He was there for a few years. He got married, sold that place, and then was able to buy a really nice 5-bedroom house, 2-car garage in a lovely area, all because he had bought that condo and was able to make some money on that condo. He did live there for 5 years, but in that 5 years, he was able to build enough of a nest egg to move on to the next phase, which he would not have been able to do he wouldn't have saved that amount of money that he made in equity.
Absolutely. That's the key. And I have a story similar to that of a young couple that I worked with a few years back, and they owned a condo. We got married. They owned a condo. I think it was a 1-bedroom. And when they bought it, they thought, okay, when we have our first child, we'll be able to live here for a little bit before we move. Then she got pregnant with twins, and they were like, okay, we have to speed this up a little bit because it was too small. But I'll never forget, I remember the young guy's family was telling him like, oh, I remember him saying to me, "I'm so happy that we bought this condo. My parents told me we were crazy, and I bought it anyway. And if we didn't buy it, we would not be able to buy something now to bring our twins up in." And so he understood that, and he had family that was against buying the condo because you don't buy a condo. And that's what gave them the leverage to be able to move up and buy something a little bit faster. So it is such an important step to get into something like that. Way to go, Evelyn. Way to go, Mom.
The whole thought behind all of this from all of the stories and experiences that we've had over our 30 something years in real estate is that we've seen through our own personal experience and the experience of our clients that buying real estate has been a solid investment for them, and has enabled them to do things that they otherwise couldn't have. I know clients, they bought their house, they made some money, they were able to buy the cottage they always wanted, or the place in Florida they always wanted, or they've used the equity in that money to help pay for their kids' education. So real estate has enabled them through leverage. It's given them that opportunity to do other things, options. I would say real estate is absolutely a great investment.
100%. And I think the one piece that's missing from when people think about buying real estate, if you look at the wealthiest businesses in the world, one of them is McDonald's. McDonald's is not a hamburger business, it's a real estate business.
For sure.
Most franchises are built on selling the real estate, the land that it sits on. And homes are the same thing. What people sometimes miss is you're not buying a house, you're buying land. Guess what? They are not building. There is no more land. And that's what makes things go up. It's not us greedy real estate agents who want prices to go up. It's not greedy sellers. In Toronto, there's no more land. The land is the land. The more people that come in, the more you're going to get people who want to buy real estate. And that's what drives the prices up. So that's what people have to understand, right? So there's a lot that there's just so many nuances that go into this. And I think it's just I think it does people a disservice when they say not to buy real estate. I feel like it's the easiest, the best. There is always stress, let's face it. I've bought a lot of houses, and every house I've bought, I'm stressed. I have never gone into one with thinking like, oh yeah, this is great. I'm always stressed. It's usually one of my kids who will push me over the edge and just say, buy it.
And having said that, I don't want people to think that just because we're realtors, we're saying this is a great thing to do. I think we're also, with our experience, saying is you have to do it right. You have to do your homework. You have to check out the area. You have to check out the house. Don't skip the home inspection. Know what you're getting into. Know what those upcoming costs are going to be. Things in a home inspection that come up isn't necessarily bad. It's just telling you what your future expenses are going to be, and then you're going to decide whether that's acceptable to you or not, right? It's going in with your eyes wide open. Talk to different people. Reach out to a lender if you're thinking about it. Find out what your options are financially, what those payments are. See if it feels comfortable enough. It's never going to feel totally comfortable, right? Anytime you're in debt, it's going to feel like I remember we got married and we got a new car and we had a loan that was like $11,000. I was freaking out. So every time you go into a little debt, there's always that what if, right? But just make sure that you're not over your head, that, you can manage it. Pick an area that's going to work for you, both lifestyle and practical. So maybe you want to be out in the country, but you don't want to be 2 hours from work or an hour and a half from work. So everything's got to fit together. Like I said, it's a puzzle. But if you do it with your eyes open and take all that information and work with it, I think real estate's a great investment.
I agree. And I think, Evelyn, that all three of us would agree with every word you said there. It is more important that you sit down and work out how it works for you. And is this the right time for you to buy? It doesn't matter what anyone else says if it's not right for you. And I think time and time again, we see that with people. They come in, they want to buy, and now it maybe isn't the right time. There will be a right time. You just have to plan for it. And if you sit down and figure it out and talk to people who know the right way to do things, if it's not this year, next year, or the year after, just plan and figure out how you can do it and feel comfortable doing it.
Right. And know that there are different ways of getting into the market, as Sandy said earlier.
Yeah, that's really important. Is it right for everybody? No. And is the timing right for everybody right now? No. It is about what if the timing is right and if it works for you, then sometimes you got to make those sacrifices and go for it. I don't think any of us are here to push anybody into doing anything they don't want. I mean, let's face it, we can't. But my son says that all the time. That works for me. Like I've never. He has helped people buy a lot of houses, and he always says, "I've never sold one house in my life. The house don't sell." So that's what it's about. Like if the timing is right, it's the education. Do your research. Is it better for you to rent and put it in the stock market? I don't know. None of us knows. What is it for you that's going to work? And let's help you get to that point.
I see myself as more of a guide. So if you're interested in real estate and you want to know, what's available, how it works, what the options are, I'm there to guide you, to provide you the information, to help you interpret it for your situation so that you, as a consumer, can make a choice that feels right for you.
100%.
Maybe it's show you something you don't know, because we have, again, that 100 years between us experience, and we've done it so many times to help people. We know that there are different ways, and every transaction is different. It's not cookie cutter. And that's the most important thing, that we can sit down and help you figure out the best way to do it for you.
In over the 30 years of experience that I've had, and I'm sure you're the same, no two deals are the same. They all have different problems, and we're there to help solve them and get over those problems. Nothing is the same.
Nothing. Yeah. And I just want to make one point of what you said about when you were showing your son houses. You guided him into making a decision because you knew it was the right decision for him. If it wasn't, you wouldn't have. That's the important piece, right? Sometimes we have to help people get over that little step of fear. And with your son, look, like your son's realized, wow, this is the best. I made a great decision. And sometimes you need that person that can help guide you to get there, right? And I've seen a lot of parents that really want to help their kids, and they do. I love that part of it. So when I say sometimes our generation is the problem, sometimes we are, but a lot of times we're not.
Thank you so much, ladies, for joining me this morning. If our viewers have any questions or want to reach out to you, how do they do that? Sandy, we'll start with you.
You can reach out to me. My email is sandy@sandycasella.com. You can always call me at 416-467-8627.
And
I'll help and have a chat.
and the areas that you work in?
Mostly GTA West. So Etobicoke out to kind of Hamilton-ish, Stony Creek, and like Burlington, Oakville areas. That's where we typically are.
Okay, great. And Ruth?
I work with the Remax Realty Services, as you said, and you can reach me at ruth@ruthvalentine.com. And my phone number is 416-779-8732.
And the areas that you work?
Main Brenton.
Okay. And again, I'm Evelyn Lopes, also with Remax Realty Services. I work at GTA Northwest, so Caledon, Orangeville, Erin, Guelph, kind of that area. You can reach me direct at 905-965-5902 or at evelyn@evelynlopez.com. So great to have you guys as good friends. I love the way that we mastermind and talk and bounce ideas off each other. Thank you so much for being there.
Appreciate it.
And to our viewers, if you want more information about contact, I will put it in the show notes. If you found this episode informative, please like and subscribe. We'll see you on the next podcast of Realty Bites, conversations on real estate and lifestyle.